All right, less than 24 hours for the AP Microeconomics exam. Yeah, I'm so excited. I hope you're excited too. And tomorrow is the last day for seniors that you have to log in for attendance. All right, so we talked about negative externalities. Hope you saw it. Now we're going to talk about positive externalities. Something like flu shots, something like solar panels, something like healthy food, vegetables, okay? Doesn't really matter, okay? So if I got flu shots, I'm gonna have my marginal social cost curve. So that's our only supply curve. With the negative externalities, you have the supply curve and the supply plus the tax. This is marginal social cost. There is no tax, so that's equal to the marginal private cost. I'm not going to write both of them in, but it's going to be handy to know that. That's our supply curve. With positive externalities, the focus is on the benefit, the demand. So we got our marginal private benefit, which is the demand, plus the marginal external benefit is equal to the subsidy. Then the marginal social benefit is the marginal private benefit plus the marginal external benefit. That's the demand plus the subsidy. Okay. So we've got our equilibrium price at $40 and our equilibrium quantity at 70. That is not allocatively efficient. Why? We're missing out on the benefits that flu shots give to people, right? Especially with regard to if I get the flu, then I pass it on to somebody else. This is obviously very appropriate. We get to talk about the vaccine. Hopefully the vaccine will be free, so that's maybe not as good of an example. The vaccine for COVID-19. All right, so oops, I screwed up the numbers here. So we've got the equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity is 70. So in the natural market, the consumer pays 40, okay, for a quantity of 70. So total consumer spending would be 40 times 70 or 2,800, okay. How much does the producer receive? Well, the producer receives $40 per unit at a quantity of 70, which is 2,800. And how much is the subsidy? Well, there is no subsidy in the natural market, okay? And it's not allocatively efficient. To get the allocatively efficient quantity, we got to provide a subsidy. And the subsidy is going to be equal to $25 as it turns out right here. So you don't have to do any graphing for this exam. So they're more likely to give you, the graphs, and you're going to have to analyze them. There'd probably be some, a big grid and a lot of fake numbers that you got to ignore. So focus on these intersections, okay? And that should help you out, okay? All right, so to get to this quantity of 100, we have a subsidy of $25. The producer receives $55, okay? And the consumer only has to pay $30. So the consumer pays $30, somebody's got to pick up that $25. That's the subsidy, okay? So the total consumer spending is going to be 30 times 100, or 3,000, all right? The total producer revenue is going to be 55 times 100, or 5,500, which means that the subsidy, that's got to pick up the slack. The consumer is only spending 3,000 and the producer is receiving 5,500. That $2,500 balance has got to be picked up by the government. That's the total subsidy. The per unit subsidy is $25. Okay. Now, few different questions going to come out of this. What would be the value of the dead weight loss? All right. Well, just focus on this triangle would be equal to this triangle here, if we create a triangle here. So it would be 1/2 base times height. The height of this triangle is 25. The distance from here to here is 30. So 1/2 times 30 times 25. I'm gonna go with 375, something like that. Might be the dead weight loss. Okay. How about what happens to producer and consumer surplus? That's the favorite subcategory for these types of questions. Well, if the government's giving money to the market, there's going to be more producer surplus and more consumer surplus. What's the consumer surplus before? This triangle here is consumer surplus before the subsidy, so that would be, well, I gotta make this $60 up here. That's greater than that 55. So I have 20 times 70 times 1/2 would be about 700. Consumer surplus after the subsidy would be this big triangle. Remember, the definition of consumer surplus, the difference between what the consumer is willing and able to pay and what they have to pay. Here they have to pay 30, and this demand curve all the way down is what they're willing and able to pay. So this region here, 30, 60 minus 30, times 100 is 3,000 divided by 1/2 is 1,500. There's a lot more consumer surplus. Producer surplus before and after the market, I'll make this $20 down here. This is my producer surplus before the subsidy, 20 times 70, which is 1,400. Divided by 2 would be 700, would be my producer surplus before. After the subsidy, producer surplus would be this big triangle here, 35 times 100 divided by 2. 3,500 divided by 2 is 1,750. Okay. Know your definitions. Producer surplus is the difference between what producers are willing and able to sell a good, the supply curve. The difference between that and what they actually are receiving. So before the subsidy, they're receiving 40. After the subsidy, they're receiving 55. All right. I think this covers pretty much everything that they might ask. If they really wanted to be jerks, they might put marginal private cost here instead of shifting marginal social benefit that way. That is a way to indicate a subsidy. Hopefully they don't do that. If the allocatively efficient quantity is greater than the equilibrium quantity, then you know that there's positive externalities. But just focus on it this way. I'm always trying to prepare for their dirty tricks. I don't think they can, just putting this on the test and having you analyze all this data might be enough of a challenge, okay? But I think this is doable. It's just a lot of teachers don't get to covering it because it's toward the end of the semester and some people don't get to it or the kids forget it. It's not as common as a monopoly graph or something like that. You should cover the monopoly graph. I'm going to probably get to that later, but I'm doing my best to try to guess what they're going to cover. Okay. All right.